The candlelight quivers in the dark bedroom, casting giant, jittery shadows on peeling wallpaper. A teenage boy lies rigid on a bed, eyes rolled back, as unseen forces thump against the walls. The air is frigid, each panicked breath he exhales escapes as a faint cloud. At the foot of the bed, a crucifix trembles in the hands of a terrified priest murmuring Latin prayers. Suddenly, a deep, guttural voice that is not the boy's own erupts from his throat, spewing blasphemies. The bed judders violently, and the boy's body levitates a few inches above the soaked sheets. In a frenzy, claw-like scratches carve into his skin as he snarls, "I am Legion." Candles snuff out, plunging the room into darkness. This isn't a scene from a Hollywood movie. This is a glimpse into the real exorcism of Roland Doe, the true horror story that inspired The Exorcist. It's early 1949 in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Maryland, USA. Roland Doe, a pseudonym for a 14-year-old boy, lives here with his, unaware that his life is about to turn into a nightmare. He's an only child, shy, intelligent, and particularly close to his aunt, a spiritualist who introduced him to the Ouija board. After his beloved aunt's sudden death, Roland desperately tries to contact her spirit using the Ouija board. That's when the strange happenings begin. At first, it's little things, distant scratching noises echoing through the walls at night, and the sound of tapping with no source. But soon, the activity escalates. Furniture drags itself across the floor, on its own. Ordinary objects fly off shelves, even levitating when Roland is nearby. The boy's mother walks into his room to find his bed trembling and bedsheets yanked off by invisible hands. Frantic and sleep-deprived, the family seeks help. They turn to their clergy, not the Catholic Church yet, but their local Lutheran pastor who has an interest in the paranormal. The pastor invites Roland to spend a night at his house, hoping to observe these disturbances firsthand. He doesn't have to wait long. Unseen scratching on the walls keeps him awake, and a heavy armchair slides across the room by itself. The pastor is stunned. By morning, he sits Roland's parents down with a grave expression and urges them to seek help from the Catholic Church. What he witnessed, he fears, is beyond anything he can handle with prayers and common counsel. It's something demonic. The Doe family, though not Catholic, is now desperate enough to do anything. They contact a local Catholic priest and explain Roland's eerie case. After some hesitation, the priest agrees to visit the boy. When he arrives, he finds Roland huddled in bed, pale and exhausted, with his bewildered parents at his side. The room feels unnaturally cold despite the mild Maryland spring. As the priest gently sprinkles holy water and begins a tentative prayer, Roland's demeanor shifts. The boy's face contorts into a hateful glare, and a low growl rumbles from his chest. In a flash, deep red scratches appear on Roland's skin, as if clawed by invisible nails. One ugly welt rises on his arm, then another, and another. The family watches in horror as letters seem to etch under his flesh, spelling out obscene words, and then, chillingly, the name Louis sears itself on his ribcage. Louis? The priest and the parents interpret this as St. Louis. It's Roland's mother's hometown. Could it be a sign? Night after night, unholy forces torment Roland. He speaks in Latin phrases he never learned, and in one moment of lucidity, tearfully begs his parents for help. Objects crash around the house at all hours. A heavy dresser topples over without explanation, nearly crushing Roland's legs. He writhes as if pinched and beaten by invisible hands, awakening with fresh bruises and cuts each morning. Exhausted and terrified, the family reaches a heartbreaking conclusion. If they stay here, they might lose their son to this evil. Recalling the word Louis carved on Roland's body, his mother decides they must head to St. Louis, Missouri, where she has relatives and where perhaps a stronger contingent of Catholic clergy can intervene. Before we continue with the harrowing events in St. Louis, take a moment to breathe. If this true story has you on edge, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support lets us keep sharing eerie, real-life tales. Have you ever experienced something paranormal or what do you think of Roland Doe's case? Let us know your thoughts or stories in the comments. Alright, deep breath. Now, back into the darkness. Roland's family arrives in St. Louis and stays with relatives on a quiet street. The house is unremarkable, cozy and ordinary by day. But as night falls, Roland's presence seems to awaken something ungodly within its walls. Relatives witness bedsheets slithering off the boy's bed and slamming doors that shake the house. Word quickly reaches a group of Jesuit priests at a local college that a boy is plagued by demonic forces. After consulting with church superiors, 2 priests come to evaluate Roland. When they first see him, he's sitting quietly at the dinner table in his relative's home, a shy kid with dark circled eyes. But the moment the priests introduce themselves and produce a crucifix, Roland's chair scrapes back on its own, and the boy is thrown into a violent trance. He hisses like an animal and lunges. It takes the strength of both priests and Roland's uncle to restrain him. This disturbing encounter convinces the clergy that an exorcism is not only warranted but urgent. Shortly thereafter, permission is granted by the local archbishop to perform the ancient rite of exorcism on Roland. The priests prepare with prayer and fasting, gathering all the sacred items they might need: holy water, relics of saints, rosaries, and a sturdy copy of the Roman ritual, the exorcism handbook. They decide it's safest to move Roland to a Catholic hospital where the rite can be done in a controlled environment away from family members and prying eyes. Under the cover of night, Roland is brought to a secured room in the psychiatric wing of Election Brothers Hospital. It's March 1949, and the stage is set for a spiritual battle. Night after night, the exorcism ritual is repeated. In the hospital's dimly lit room, chants of the Litany of the Saints mingle with Roland's inhuman screams. The priests, clad in cassocks now spattered with the boy's spittle and blood from self-inflicted scratches, hold crucifixes firmly as they command the demon to leave in Latin. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, over and over. Roland's reaction is beyond violent. He thrashes against his restraints with such force that the iron bed frame rattles. At times, his body contorts into a bow, with only his heels and the back of his head touching the mattress. He howls in a dozen voices, some guttural and demonic, others high-pitched and mocking, mimicking the priest's prayers in a twisted sing-song. When the priests sprinkle holy water on him, Roland shrieks as if it burns, and a new set of scratches rip open across his chest, spelling the word hell. On one occasion, as the lead priest presses a crucifix to Roland's hand, the boy's eyes snap open, blazing with a hatred not his own. In a voice that rattles the windows, he spits out, "Leave him alone, you!" A stream of profanity so foul that the priest staggers. Roland spits back at the clergy, his saliva hitting a priest's face with unnerving accuracy. The room itself seems to come alive. A side table lifts off the floor and hurls itself across the room, narrowly missing one priest's head. Witnesses would later claim the boy showed superhuman strength during these episodes, and they saw evidence of it when one night Roland manages to break loose one of the leather arm restraints. With a feral snarl, he reaches under the mattress and yanks out a bedspring wire, swiping it like A. The priest closest to him gasps in pain as the metal spring slashes his arm, opening a deep gash. Chaos erupts. It takes 3 people to wrestle the makeshift weapon from Roland and subdue him again. For a moment, the exorcism is halted as the wounded priest stumbles out, clutching his bleeding arm, and another steps in to take his place. The exorcism continues over several grueling weeks. Each time the priests think they are making progress, Roland's body is racked by another convulsion, or he vomits and laughs, ridiculing their faith. He speaks in Latin, and in what sounds like ancient Greek, voices claiming to be various demonic entities. At one point, a thin, sulky voice emanating from Roland announces it will only depart if he speaks a word of Greek, a language Roland doesn't know. The priests prompt him to say Dominus, Latin for Lord, But Roland, in a deep trance, refuses and instead launches into a frenzy, lashing out and even breaking the nose of one assisting priest with a sudden headbutt. The physical toll on everyone is immense. Roland's body is a map of raw wounds and bruises. The priests are exhausted, their faith tested to the breaking point. And then comes the night of April 18, 1949. It's past 10 p.m. on Easter Monday. The priests, despite fatigue, are determined that this night will be the end of the ordeal. They have placed holy relics and crucifixes upon Roland's body as he lies rigid and snarling on the bed. The room is like ice. Each exhalation from the priests emerges as mist, and their breath mingles with the stench of sweat and blood. Roland is in one of his violent trances again, cursing in a demonic voice that alternates between Latin and English. As another fit of seizures contorts the boy, the priests call on their last spiritual weapon. In unison, they invoke the name of Saint Michael the Archangel, the warrior saint who cast Lucifer out of heaven. "Saint Michael, defend us in battle," they shout, commanding the demon to yield and announcing that Saint Michael will fight for Roland's soul. What happens next sears itself into the memory of everyone present. Roland suddenly falls eerily still. His back arches one final time and then slams down onto the mattress. He lets out a terrifying, prolonged scream, a sound no one there will ever forget, and then silence. For the first time in months, complete silence. Roland's body relaxes, and he collapses back onto the soaked, tattered sheets. The boy blinks open his eyes, now clear and calm. In a soft, completely ordinary voice, his own voice, he says he's gone. The priests exchange glances, hardly daring to believe. They test the boy with the holy names that had previously sent him into attacks. "Jesus," one whispers. Roland simply looks at him, tired but at peace. There is no reaction, no convulsion. The demon that claimed the boy is truly gone. Roland reports that he had a vision during the climax of the battle. He saw the mighty Saint Michael vanquishing a dark, evil figure on a great battlefield. As the priests sag to their knees in thanks, Roland comes fully to his senses. He begins to cry, but these are tears of relief. It's over. After months of living in a nightmare, the boy feels normal again. The coldness in the room lifts, and a gentle warmth seems to return to the air. Even the deep scratches on his skin are fading away, as if they were never there. In the days after the final exorcism, Roland Doe recovers rapidly. He has no memory of his wild actions while under the entity's control. Every paranormal occurrence ceases immediately. The house in St. Louis falls quiet and still, feeling strangely empty without the oppressive presence that had plagued it. After a short rest, Roland and his grateful parents quietly return home to Maryland. They never speak publicly about what happened. In fact, for decades, the true identity of Roland Doe and the details of his ordeal remain shrouded in secrecy. Roland goes on to lead a normal, happy life. By all accounts, he grew up free of any further demonic influence, found a job, and even married and had children. He would later name a son Michael, in honor of the angelic protector he believed saved him. The priests who attended him swore to confidentiality, noting only that the boy went on to live a rather ordinary life. They sought no publicity. For them, it was a solemn duty performed, not something to broadcast. Yet, such a monumental battle between good and evil could not stay hidden forever. In August 1949, a few months after the exorcism, a brief article appeared in the Washington Post noting that local Catholic priests had performed an exorcism on a teenage boy, the first hint of this story to the public. The piece was skeletal on details, not even giving the boy's name, but it was enough to spark whispers. Over the years, bits of the story filtered through circles of clergy and students at St. Louis University, where some of those involved taught. One person who took great interest was a Georgetown University alumnus and aspiring writer named William Peter Blatty. Fascinated by the idea of a real demonic possession, Blatty tracked down what information he could, including a diary kept by one of Roland's attending priests. In 1971, Blatty published the best-selling novel, The Exorcist, directly inspired by Roland Doe's ordeal. He changed details in the novel and the famous 1973 film adaptation. The possessed protagonist is a 12-year-old girl in Washington, D.C., and some of the most grotesque scenes, like a head spinning 360 degrees or green vomit, were Blatty's invention for dramatic effect. But many of the frightening phenomena, the bed shaking, the guttural voices, the scratches, the violent contortions, and the holy water burning, all came straight from the real events witnessed in 1949. Blatty's The Exorcist and its film terrified millions precisely because truth resonated within the fiction. Audiences sensed that this story, though embellished, had roots in reality. The exorcism of Roland Doe became one of the most famous and chilling cases of purported demonic possession on record. To this day, it fuels debates. Was Roland truly possessed by a demon, or could it have been a severe psychological or neurological disorder combined with poltergeist-like phenomena? We may never have a definitive answer. The Catholic Church's official stance was simply that something beyond explanation had afflicted the boy, and that through faith, he was freed from it. What remains undeniable is the impact of Roland's case. It quietly influenced popular culture and forever changed the way we imagine demonic possession in stories and films. But for those who were in that room, the priests, the family, it was not about fame or inspiration. It was a raw, primal encounter with what they believed to be pure evil, met with courage, desperation, and unyielding faith. If this haunting true tale gave you goosebumps, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life horrors and mysteries. What do you think was behind the Roland Doe exorcism? A genuine demonic presence, or something that science just hasn't explained yet? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know if you've ever experienced anything you can't quite explain. Roland Doe's story forces us to ask, do we dare peek into the darkness, believing that sometimes the darkness might look back? Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.